And welcome back. We have a 2007 HSE Range Rover, and looking at the driver's side wheel, it looks fairly normal. Now when you come look at the passenger side, you can see the bottom is really far kicked out. It has way too much negative camber. Now the story behind this truck, it was recently in an accident, hit right here on the passenger or the right side of the vehicle, and all of this was smashed in. I actually put a new/used fender from a salvage yard. uh it was nice to get a color match, more or less, but I went ahead and replaced the lower control arms because they were completely bent, and while I was down there I noticed that the ball joint was bad, so we're gonna go ahead and take care of that today. As you can see, I lifted up the truck and I'm using a jack stand. Please do not rely on a floor jack. They can give out, this is a very heavy truck, so always use a jack stand. And as you can see, I also put wheel chocks on the rear wheels, so even if you want to use a block of wood or a brick, just use something to prevent the truck from rolling while it's up on the jack stand. Now here I have the truck lifted up already, and I'm going to use my impact gun to remove the lug nuts. If you do not have an impact gun, make sure to loosen the lug nuts while the vehicle is still on the ground, and after you raise it up and you have it secure, then you can proceed with taking off the lug nuts and the wheel. I'm making this video because the lower ball joint is a wear and tear item, and on any vehicle at some point it's going to need a lower ball joint, so I hope this is going to help you. But in this case, since it was in an accident, we have excessive negative camber. It's just way too much, so there's something else going on here. It's not the strut, because after this video we actually replaced the strut because of a leaking air suspension, and even with the strut replaced, the wheel sits the same exact way. Now the only thing, or not the only thing, but the other possibility is the actual knuckle itself right here, right at the end, could also be bent. So that's a possibility, but hey, it's not my truck and it's not my call. It's really hard to tell when something like that is bent, so it would definitely have to go to an alignment shop or some sort of specialist to get checked out. Now here I am loosening the nut and bolt that's going to the lower control arm, because I figure it'll be nice to have the lower control arm just sag down and not be in my way as I focus on the ball joint. The problem is, it's very difficult to find a proper torque spec for this vehicle, so I would recommend that you do not even touch those two bolts that I just loosened up, and leave all of that alone. What you want to do is just move the lower control arm from the ball joint right here, and once you get them separated, you get in the car and you turn the steering wheel all the way to the left, and it'll move the ball joint away from the lower control arm, and it even gives you more space to work with. Now you can go at your lower control arm with a hammer and just keep whacking it until it separates from the ball joint, but it really is best to just use the correct tool like I did. You could go to your local auto parts store, you may be able to rent it, or you can even just buy them online. They're pretty inexpensive. The two fasteners holding on the lower ball joint actually come off pretty easy, so you shouldn't have any problem with that. Once you have both fasteners removed, now the real fun begins. As you can see, I have two of my extensions connected together. And we're basically going to run alongside the axle and try to get on top of the ball joint. Now here I am using like a mini sledgehammer. I'm not sure how many pounds this hammer is, but basically the bigger the hammer, the better it's going to help. And I know I made it look easy, but trust me, it's not. Here I am using a chisel, and I'm just trying to hit the ear of the ball joint right here. I just want it to rotate. You want it to start moving, just something, like just the light at the end of the tunnel. You want to get started somehow. So the chisel really helped me to get this whole thing started, but as you can see, here goes the ball joint popping out. But honestly, it was maybe 30 to 40 minutes of fighting with this thing to get it out. So you're definitely in for something here. And once you do get it out, make sure you clean off any rust from inside of the bore. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but the more you get out, the easier it's gonna make for new ones to go in. And using brake parts cleaners to clean everything. Now a little tip to try to get the old one out is use penetrating oil, obviously, and I even pulled out my mini propane torch, and you want to heat up this area right here. So try not to go too crazy with it. Don't have like the heat blasting, because you got to keep in mind there are rubber boots here from the axle and from the other ball joint next to it. You definitely do not want to burn a hole in them. So just keep that in mind. Another tip is, as you can see, I'm running into two fasteners right now just to make sure that the threads are okay. If any of the threads are damaged, right now is the time to address them. You don't want to fight to get the new ball joint in and to find out that the threads are messed up, because that's gonna suck. So here I am, just more or less trying to test fit the new part, and it doesn't even want to start to go in. It won't, like, at all. So now I'm starting to wonder if something's wrong with the part, because it's not an OEM part. It is an aftermarket one from a local auto parts store. So I just thought I'd check both of them out. I got my digital calipers here, and I checked both of them, and for the most part, they're within spec. I mean, the new one may show like slightly larger diameter, but to me it's just, it seems like it should work. So I just had to come up with another solution to get this thing started. Okay, so we are making some progress here. As you can see, I probably have it pressed in about 1/4 of an inch right now, but there is something I had to do to get it started. Now I noticed that the original ball joint had more of a bevel right on the lip right here, right at the edge. So I just grabbed one of my files and I went at the new ball joint all the way around it, just making more of a bevel on it, and it really helped to get that ball joint started. Once I got it started, as you can see, I'm using an extension and a hammer, and you just want to alternate between sides. Don't keep going crazy on one side only, because then you're going to get it in there at an angle and you're just going to get it stuck. So just make sure you're alternating back and forth between both tabs, and you just really want to finesse it in. Don't go crazy on it. Another big tip is try to get it in its correct orientation the first time, meaning the two tabs on the sides, or the ears, make sure that they're lined up with the bolt holes so you could run the fasteners in. Because once this thing starts to get pressed in even a little bit, there really isn't much wiggle room to rotate it once it's inside of the board. So just before you even start, just make sure everything is aligned properly before you start pressing it in. And once you get maybe to the halfway point where you could actually start threading in the fasteners, then you probably should be able to catch like 2 or 3 threads. Then you could start using the fasteners to run the ball joint in. And again, keep using your penetrating oil, and you're just going to alternate between the fasteners, just maybe 1/4 of a turn, and just keep going back and forth between both of them, and eventually the ball joint will press in. Like I said, it's going to take some time to get it done, but it will work. As you can see, everything looks nice. It's nice and flush. So the hard work is all done. Now it's just a matter of putting everything back together again. Now, if you took my advice earlier and you didn't loosen that nut and bolt on the lower control arm, you won't have to do any of this right here. But at any rate, basically you're lifting up the suspension with the floor jack, and you want to measure from the center arc of the fender down to the axle nut. You want to get the axle nut into the 18 to 19 inches ballpark, and then you can come underneath the car again and tighten up this nut and bolt. And the fact that it's hard to get the correct torque specs for this fastener right here, I just recommend not touching it at all. This is why I mentioned it earlier in the video. You're better off just leaving it alone so you don't have to go through this entire process. And once again, the torque specs for the lower ball joint, I couldn't find any set in stone information on this. The best I could find online was about 85 pound-feet, and it seemed appropriate, so that's what I set mine to. Make the noise. Once you put your vehicle back on the ground and you properly tighten the lug nuts, don't forget to remove the wheel chocks from the rear wheels, and you're all done. So I hope the video helped you, and I hope you're very successful on doing this job. At any rate, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and like always, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.